And we are live.
Aloha, snack bar, everyone. It's the one, the only, the Senor Silverback, the economic grape ape, the majestic one. Back again on another day with my main man, the master of the flux capacitor, the maven of the airwaves, the sidekick extraordinaire himself, the one half of this dynamic duo, CJ, for another Rogue Money Mornings, and we are joined none other than the Russian analyst, James. He will be joining us today as we break down the news and the views and the information that is important to you. With that being said, follow us on Twitter at the Rogue Money. Check us out on Facebook, Rogue Money, and RogueMoney.net, where the most explosive, cutting edge articles that make sense in this crazy, mixed up world we live in. And also, guys, if you're running from the debt collectors, you are frightened and you are afraid that they might take you or your puppy and hold you for ransom, or they might even sell your kidneys in the black market, and you're afraid of that in order to pay off the debt you owe them, then you need to call myfreedomnow.us, myfreedomnow.us, or heck, you just need to get a tweak in your credit score, just have some a better score. You should get refinanced or get that car of your dreams, because used car prices and dealers and car lots are not moving anything these days. Check out myfreedomnow.us. With that being said, gentlemen, what's crack-a-lackin'?
Hey, good morning, V. Good morning, James.
Dobro utra, Rogue Money.
Yes, James. I was hearing that some of the ISIS guys are celebrating so much that many of them are going to be naming their sons after the Tomahawk cruise missile. One name I heard often mentioned is Mohammed Walid Tomahawk Al Sharif.
Yeah. Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I also heard that Kamal Al Saringas Muhammad is another one. So
Nice.
Yeah, well, at least it's not Ya Ali, Ya Ali, Muhammad, Ya Ali, like the Hezbollah guys teach the Russians.
oh yeah, there you go.
The Shia slogans.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's haram, but we won't go into that. But
No.
anyway,
Let's not go into the haram. Hey,
in
James. I mean,
go
there
ahead.
you go. Perfect. No, your audio was a little low. Now you're coming in perfect. So let's get into the topic, CJ, and
I had
we'll
to
just go
stand
around the
up
round
and
table.
project.
Yeah.
But we don't have
As
any
long,
mic popping, do
I
we?
know you had
We
some
got some
stomach
complaints in the
issues.
comments about the mic popping, but I got my headphones in, so there shouldn't be any interference with
Hey,
it.
I know that you had some stomach issues. As long as you don't projectile vomit, we're good.
Yeah, I'll try not to vomit on my iPhone. I'm feeling much better today,
All
actually.
right,
But
good.
appreciate you asking.
A spoonful of vodka, man, just makes it all better, bro.
Yeah, more like buckwheat grechka.
Buckwheat.
So, yes, we have the situation in Syria. We have. I wanted to kick off with Rex Tillerson in Moscow
Yes,
today
T-Rex.
to meet with Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister.
Yep.
His meeting, Mr. Tillerson's meeting with Vladimir Vladimirovich, was canceled to express the Russians' displeasure and disdain
Reminds me
for
of Primakov, man.
not quite. I wouldn't say it's quite on the
Almost, not
same level as
exactly.
Yevgeny Primakov, who was known by his KGB nickname Maxim, turning around the airliner in the middle of the Atlantic when
Yep.
the American cruise missiles, Tomahawk cruise missiles, started hitting the Serbian, the territory of the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia, the
Yep.
Russians' Slavic Orthodox brothers, the Serbs. But I would say that there are a lot of people in Russia who are pissed. Of course, the trolls would say that they have buyer's remorse over Agent Donat Trollstoyevsky, Agent Donat Ivanovich Trollstoyevsky not performing his duties for the motherland as they were expecting. But the reality is, I think Eric Trump, was it Eric or I
Eric,
can't remember which kid was saying that
they
this
will
proves
not
that
be
the
bullied.
Russians this proves that the Russians can't push my father around, and uh, so it's really, I read before as kind of show prep today, the Sakers very lengthy article analysis of what's happened and how Russia is responding to it, and
Mm.
it's kind of a depressing read and it's long, but it's actually
What
worth
did
your
he
time.
say?
Well, basically, he said that the Russians have come to the conclusion that, unfortunately, you know, the Trump administration is very similar to the Obama administration, that even if there are people in it that you can negotiate with, it's not a negotiable partner.
Right.
I forget the exact phrase he used in Russian, but it's basically saying that it's not even an issue of deception or dishonesty, as it is just that there's really no one in charge except for the most aggressive or hawkish elements, and any deal you make, it can simply be sabotaged. Case in point, of course, the first time American forces bombed the Syrian Arab Army directly was not this Tomahawk cruise missile strike last Thursday or Friday morning in Syria. It was when the Pentagon bombed the Syrian Arab Army troops who were defending the city of Deir ez-Zor, which was
I
under
remember that.
Yeah, last year, last September, when
they were cornering ISIS, they were about to finish.
They were kettling ISIS. They were killing a bunch of them and killing them by the bushel. And then, Uncle Sam had to come in and provide ISIS with some air support. And of course, it was a mistake, and they were apologizing. The fact is, the U.S. had no business dropping bombs in Deir ez-Zor, hadn't done it except one time before that. So the excuses that they were trying to hit a legitimate ISIS target and they just missed don't hold water.
80 Syrian soldiers were killed.
88, I think it was 88. At least 88.
Yep.
Yeah, Syrian soldiers were killed and several more wounded, and that allowed ISIS temporarily to cut the garrison, the Syrian government-held territory in the city, in two, almost where they had cut them off from the airport, or were trying to, where they're getting their ammunition and lifeline for I think it's over 100,000 civilians living in the government-held part of the city.
Right.
So, it was almost a major disaster, and it was only the fact that the commander of the Syrian forces in that city is a total badass. He's a Druze, by the way. That they were able to hold the line, and with Russian air support and supplies, and then probably Spetsnaz advisors, they were able to push the Daesh backs back. But the point is that, I don't expect the negotiations between Rex Tillerson and Lavrov to go very well today.
I think Lavrov will tear him a new one.
I think Lavrov is tearing him a new one, possibly even as we speak.
Multiple new ones.
Moscow is, I think, 8 hours ahead now. Of Eastern, because they don't have daylight savings time there. So, I'm sure that the meeting at the Russian Foreign Ministry went over just like a lead balloon for Mr. Tillerson, and I'm sure that Lavrov told him that this was a total false flag, and your so-called moderate rebels had these chemicals or set them off themselves.
Correct. Which brings us to this, James. CJ, what's going on with these pretexts, man? I mean, what's going on with this? False flags. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, there's no, in terms of, they keep changing the narrative. I mean, I feel sorry for any foreign country trying to understand what the U.S. foreign policy is, because I don't think that we have one, V.
It's called schizophrenia, man. That's the U.S. foreign policy.
That was exactly the point the Saker made. I mean, one day Tillerson's saying Assad can stay, and even Nikki Haley's forced to say, well, the Syrian people decided, and then the next week, of course, this happens. And now they're saying, well, we'll take further action, and maybe even barrel bombing will precipitate further action. And for those who don't know, a barrel bomb is just a collection of high explosives packed with some shrapnel or nails or something that is dropped out of a helicopter. It doesn't necessarily involve any chemical weapons whatsoever, which the Syrian government no longer has. In fact, was certified not to have by the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, OCPW, or OPCW. So, and that was an agreement supervised.
It was signed off by both the U.S. and the Russians. Verified.
Exactly. And so, what CJ was about to get into, and I'll let him get into it, is the fact that, and I wrote an article about this that was put up at Rogue Money early this morning, is that they're trying to salvage the narrative of this ridiculous narrative that Assad had both not just the means, but more importantly, the motive to use chemical weapons on this town of Khan Sheikhoun for no apparent reason. I mean, it's not a frontline town, but just solely to terrorize civilians opposed to him. It goes the narrative. They're trying to salvage it by basically saying, well, the reason that the inspectors missed the presence of the chemical weapons at this base outside Homs, I think it's about 25 kilometers southeast of the city in the desert, is precisely because the chemical weapons came directly from Russia, or the Ruskies were somehow involved in the use of these chemical weapons deliberately, and then they tried to cover it up by attacking the hospital. Of course, no substantiation for any of this whatsoever.
Exactly. So with this whole entire pretext, if they do anything now what the precedence that's been laid out, gentlemen, is that any sort of false flag basically will lead to a strike against Assad. So the freaking Syrian rebels, all they got to do is set off another sarin gas, set off whatever chemical agent.
It wasn't even sarin. It was
correct. It was
or chlorine or.
They could videotape. They could do a white hat videotape the Hollywood production.
White helmets, yeah.
Right, where they're dumping baking soda on everybody and telling everybody it's anthrax. Look,
to go
it's
into
not convulsions,
with anthrax, right, and foam at the mouth, right?
Exactly. And then put whipped cream on everybody's mouth. And, oh, look, it's anthrax. Don't even foam. Just put whipped cream. Because the rest of the world's smart enough to be like, wait a minute, that's baking soda and whipped cream. And, hey, the kid's eye is blinking, opening, and closing. And the other guy in the background, he's moving around a little bit. The rest of the world's smart enough to know that. The idiot, dumb American media will pick it up, ratchet it up, and then all of a sudden the pictures will come out to Trump. And then next you know, Ivanka will start crying because the babies are killed and the babies, the kids, and here we go, 30 more Tomahawk cruise missiles. This is great. What a great deal we have set up with USIS. It's wonderful.
Go ahead, CJ. You were about to talk about the pretext a little more in detail.
No, I was enjoying the conversation.
And stole your thunder as far as them coming up with this ridiculous story that the Russians brought in the chemicals after they disposed of all the nerve agent on an American ship, by the way. It was done on an American ship, and they shipped some of the chemicals, I think, to Germany as well.
Well, here's where it falls back to is that, unfortunately, when you have an administration that is so far off messaging, it allows these characters to kind of allow themselves to enter their controlled narrative. For example, it was John McCain who made that accusation that Russia provide the sarin gas that did this, and in fact, it's not.
And Representative Adam Full of Schiff from Burbank, California, the Inspector Clouseau of the Trump-Russia conspiracy.
So when you allow these people to interject their narrative, and primarily, quickly becoming one of my favorite characters in the administration is Spicy Spicer. So Spicy Spice gets up there. Well, he gets up in front of the press corps and he's delivering the White House briefing. And he specifically talks about, okay, it's no longer, and we talked about this just a moment ago, it's no longer, chemical weapons. Now it's the barrel bombs. If they use barrel bombs, we're going to attack. If they provide food and water to the refugees, we're going to bomb because we know that it has poison in it. I mean, he didn't say that. I'm just getting completely out of control with what he's stating. And then specifically what was real interesting is they kind of caught him off guard a little bit. So he was kind of losing his message a little bit, and then he completely comes out and emphatically states that the goal is to destabilize Syria. And I think that's the end game, is that there's no narrative for the other side of what happens if Assad does come out. Here we have China and Russia that's pushing for allowing the people of Syria to decide their future, which is what does need to take place. Not put in some type of like in Iraq where we put a U.S. Educated, basically appoint whoever we want to control the country. So I think that's important to understand, is that the goal here is just basically to destabilize Syria from the progress that they've made,
carve the country up,
that they've made the last several years. They don't have a clear vision for it. They don't have a clear understanding other than just to destabilize.
Because they're not good at anything else. It's the empire of chaos has resurrected from the ashes of nationalism, it seems like. And unless something is done to get to reel this BS in, it's going to continue and it's going to drive us over the cliff, man. Which brings us to the next thing, guys. Here's the other thing, okay? White House is struggling to explain what's next in Syria. Actually, we already went over that. What I'm trying to say is actually the next thing is this. Did North Korea hack South Korea and knows the U.S. war plans? Because we know, we got ships steaming over there. We have a
USS Carl Vinson, Nimitz class carrier battle group.
What say you, James? Korea. What say you, James?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the connection between Syria and Korea, I'm glad you made that connection, because that's what I think you mentioned. You were referring to Charles Hugh Smith's article where he talked about whether this entire strike was kind of just done half-assed to send a message, but not to piss off the Russians to the point that we would have an actual direct U.S.-Russian confrontation that might frankly, disabuse Americans of the idea of the utter invincibility of our military. Because I was about to say that one of the other very important points the Saker made in his article that was published at Vineyard of the Saker this morning, that echoes what I said about the Tomahawk missiles and why only 23 of them actually made it to the target, is that the Russians turned on their off switch. They turned on the Krasuka 4 electronic jammers. And apparently a lot of these Tomahawks, just either the circuitry got fried or they just went into the drink, into the Mediterranean. And one of them, we know one of them crashed into the garden of a citizen in Tartus in that area where the Russians have their port facility. I'm trying to skip ahead to North Korea and make the connection. But the bottom line is that the Russians made it clear that they have the capability to shut down once again a lot of our most important frontline systems. Now, they're not going to do that for North Korea, for the North Koreans, of course, but the point is that I don't think that the firing of these missiles had the effect on Xi Jinping, who Charles Hugh Smith believes was the real intended audience of this strike, as Trump's guest, that Trump or the people around him who are giving him very bad advice said, intended. I mean, the Chinese don't think the way we do. They don't think in the short time span, memories of a goldfish that we do.
Yeah.
And I just don't think that really they came away all that impressed, or that they think that Trump really has the stomach, not the cojones, but the stomach, along with the American people, much less the political class, which is completely out of reality, out of touch with even, not just economic reality, but also even military reality. Because look, I mean, North Korea, yeah, it's backward. It has a military with a lot of old stuff, but the fact of the matter is they can absorb a strike. We could hit all their nuke facilities and a lot of their rocketry bases, but then what happens? I mean, we're not going to be able to stop them from shelling leveling half of Seoul in retaliation.
No, because we don't have an off switch.
We can't intercept all of the missiles that will miss in the first targeting wave.
Right.
And again, it's not a question of just the low efficiency, as the Russian General Major Igor Konashenkov, Major General, called it, of these Tomahawk strikes. The Tomahawks were still very accurate. And in fact, they didn't even really try to crater the runway, is what we found out. They gave the Russians about 2 hours notice, which gave them just enough time to get their personnel off the base and turn on those jammers. But the Russian SAMs stood down. Everybody's like, oh, they ran an article at Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, where they claimed that, all these Russian language speaking trolls were out on the RUNET saying, oh, where's our vaunted S-300? Where's our S-400? We didn't even try to shoot down the American missiles. What a humiliation for Putin. Of course, those people are trolls. Most of them are Ukrainian or NATO trolls. They're not right. Russian citizens saying that stuff. It was nonsense. They stood the SAMs down because they wanted to see what the electronic system could do. And similarly in North Korea, I mean, no, they don't have that type of stuff, and they probably can't intercept the incoming Tomahawks. But what they can do is simply absorb a strike and then basically say, okay, we're going to retaliate. We'll send a missile.
They will rain down 100,000 missiles on Seoul.
Right.
That's what's going to happen. These a-holes are willing.
They'll just drop one in Tokyo, and the vaunted Aegis system that's supposed to be able to protect Tokyo or Okinawa will miss. And, we'll have dozens of dead Americans from a missile strike on the airbase, or Busan airbase, or even as far as Guam or maybe Elmendorf in Alaska.
The whole point being is look, looking at the North Korean situation, I've studied these idiots years ago. They're going to go for broke. An attack on North Korea, they will set off a barrage of 100,000 missiles, and artillery will rain down on the DMZ, the demilitarized zone, as well as Seoul.
And there will be special forces raised. They'll probably kill, some South Korean generals in the rear, or, do some sort of sabotage operations,
Yep.
various things. They might be able to get inside the wire at Busan, as far south, we think it's so far away from the DMZ, it's untouchable, but you don't know how many sleeper cells the North Koreans have put in the country.
Hey, look what happened in Malaysia.
Exactly. How many hidden arms caches there are, or what real VX, not the fake VX that the Syrian rebels use, could do, whatever it was, could do to, you drop a few vials of that into a base like Busan. I mean, again, I don't know exactly what they can do, but I think they can do a hell of a lot more than the Pentagon is telling Trump. And that's
right. So what is that? Now look at the Chinese response. That type of think about it. If Seoul's so drunk on the Kool-Aid, they're going to go along with this insane cockamamie plan of, hey, we're going to unite the Koreas by force by taking out Kim Jong-un,
which maybe is the reason they impeached. Sorry to interrupt, V, but maybe that's the reason they impeached their previous president in this cockamamie corruption scandal thing, because they never would have bothered to do that in the 80s or 90s, because maybe she just didn't want to go on with it. She thought it was a stupid idea.
Absolutely. That's number one. And number two, I believe that wholeheartedly. And number two, she's a proponent of the New Silk Road. She's a proponent of Korean integration. She's a proponent of working with the Chinese and the Eurasian Economic Union. She wants Korea to be integrated into that. So that I knew as soon as she was removed, this was another Dilma Rousseff operation that the Cocaine Import Agency was running, another color revolution, so to speak. Now you got these brainwashed Koreans, these younger generation who don't know what war is, who are just grew up on Psy and Gangnam Style,
K-pop, yeah,
K-pop and Gangnam Style is the only thing these kids know, and they're like saying, "Oh, it's unconstitutional." They're allowing this thing to go through. They don't understand the danger. See, the freaking North Koreans, they don't care. They'll die. They'll
die in huge numbers. They'll die in huge numbers.
They don't care.
Take a bunch of South Koreans, above all Americans,
because they're brainwashed. They're brainwashed into dying for their state, right? And so they're going to lobby off 100,000 guys. That's the number. 100,000 warheads of conventional means will rain down on South Korea, and the U.S.
And Israelis and Americans should take note, because that's exactly. I mean, on a smaller scale, that's Hezbollah has a very similar arsenal, and they also have a bunch of tunnels in southern Lebanon where they keep all the rockets, including probably some stuff that the Israelis don't think they have, like drones, for example. So yeah, I mean, it's when you look at it, I mean, it's just craziness. But you don't do any of these things. I think this is what's bothering the Russians so much, and this is the fear not so much fear as just consternation and insane frustration you see in my friend the Saker's essay, is that you don't do these things unless your deep state, your American powers that be behind the throne, behind the curtain, realize that the jig is almost up for the dollar. You don't set off all this type of conflagration unless you're truly, really desperate.
Absolutely. And they are desperate without a doubt. Without a doubt. These guys are like kids. There's no strategy. You talk to anybody, there's no strategy. It's just, let's just blow shit up.
That's I tried, believe me, folks in this audience, I tried to give Trump the benefit of the doubt. I tried for the longest time, even when the Goldman Sachs people were getting the administration, and Jared was doing his thing, and on, and he folded like a cheap suit when the judges blocked all his initiatives, and they didn't try, he didn't go after the Clintons nearly as aggressively, or
look at Susan Rice. That's the litmus test.
Yeah, all the shenanigans and the sponsorship of the jihadist terrorists. He didn't go after John Ibn Saud Brennan. All these big fat targets that he could have gone back after to direct some counter battery fire against the establishment that was giving him a hard time over this Russia stuff. No. Instead, he has to accept their narrative that Assad just uses poison gas for no apparent reason, just because he's evil, pure evil, and the Ruskies helped him, just to get them off his back about this Russia stuff. But it's stupid. I mean, ultimately, it's self-defeating, as Ken said in his article that he published. Trump is just he's killing his base.
Yes.
They're just like, what the hell is it going to take to finally? Is anything going to ever change in this country peacefully at the ballot box? I mean, how many times do we have to say we don't want wars? We voted for Bush, who said, I'm against nation building in 2000. People forgot about that because of 9/11. But
Right.
he positioned himself as the anti-nation building candidate. Well, Gore was like, oh, well, Clinton did a great job in the Balkans. And people were already tired of it back then. And then 9/11 happened. Everybody rallies around the flag, and we're going to go kick some ass. And now we've been in Afghanistan longer than any other American war.
And we can barely hold on to Kabul.
Kabul,
we can barely hold on to Kabul.
And we learned nothing from what happened to the Russians. And by the way, I met a guy in Moscow who actually went to Quantico, was asked after 9/11 to speak about the Soviet war in Afghanistan. Some of you who read Veterans Today, I don't endorse that site, may have heard of him, Yevgeny Khrushchev. I met the guy, and he told me all about how he went drinking with Marines and told them about taking rocket fire in Afghanistan and what it was like to be in the shit. And we learned nothing from any of that. Because we're Americans, we'll do it smarter and better than everybody else,
and we haven't won a single war, bro.
We haven't won a single war since World War II. I mean, Korea was a draw.
We didn't even win.
Vietnam, we lost. Yeah, Grenada was
World War II was over the European theater in 1942 with Stalingrad, man. The Russians
43 Kursk, right. Really, Kursk was the real turning point when the Germans just gambled it all on this huge armored offensive. And after that, they were beaten.
The Russians were beating the crap out of the Germans at that point. And so we come in for dust up. We dropped a nuke on Japan after we cut off all the supply lines. They were already next to dead.
Yeah,
we haven't won anything. What we have is a great marketing propaganda machine. Running roughshod with Hollywood.
But see, that's what's scary about the North Koreans. They don't give a crap about that. Like I said,
no, they don't.
Die in huge numbers. And it's the same with Hezbollah, with Israel. They don't give a crap how vaunted the mighty Israeli Air Force and IDF are. They'll die, 5 or 6 to 1 as long as they get to kill a bunch of Bennies, Zivis, and Davids, right along with it. If they lose 10,000 and they kill 3,000 or 4,000 Israelis, they think they're way ahead. I mean, that's great. So, yeah, this is really it's just not fun anymore. It's just gotten to a point where it's like,
I'm sick of it.
Damn, what is it going to take for us to stop this thing peacefully? And I think the only thing it's going to take is that we have to finally have a real, honest to God anti-war movement in this country as broad-based as possible. Again, I think Harley Schlanger is going to be talking about this. I mean, I'm sure the LaRouche movement. The thing about them is that they're not left, they're not right. There's people say, oh, they're left wing in their politics because they want to reinstitute Glass-Steagall, or they talk about how great FDR was. Well, you can argue that back and forth. That's a historical argument.
Right. That's not a political argument.
No, they're radically right wing because they're pro-Russian and evil, and it's stupid. We got to get out of this left-right paradigm. It's killing us.
Need to. This is not sports here. This is not like Yankees fans having arguments with the Mets fans. Or Giants fans having arguments with Jets fans. This is not it, man. We got to get behind Tulsi Gabbard and Rand Paul and Thomas. Exactly. We need to get behind the ideals.
Yeah. And say enough's enough. You haven't offered the proof. We don't just accept your word for it anymore. Not after Iraqi WMDs. We want that guy who was appropriately skeptical of the intelligence agencies and their product back. That other Trump that was tweeting in 2013, don't go into Syria, don't get bogged down there. It's going to be bad. You've got to get Congress's permission.
But it's okay, though. It's okay.
We want that guy back before they bought it. The neocons body snatched.
Right. Exactly. Now, but it's okay though now because what's important is the kids, the babies. Oh, the babies. His daughter was crying about the babies. His son is out there saying that Putin can't bully us, and his grandson. Is shitting him, not his son-in-law is shitting himself in his pants every day because he knows he owes the Chinese $365 million. He has a building that he owns that he can't offload. He's got his total assets of his company $7 billion, and he's got over
666 Fifth Avenue. That's probably some.
It's a Ponzi scheme, man.
Buying, but look, and again, this is the final point that the Saker made that I wanted to repeat because I'm hearing the same things from. Reader DP, you know who you are in somewhere in the central portion of the continental United States. He's saying, where are the Chinese? Why aren't they taking a tougher line? Why are the Russians kind of on their own on this? Or why does it take Bolivia? Bolivia of all countries, this poor, very nice, wonderful country in South America, landlocked in the Andes, to make the point to show that photograph of Colin Powell with his vile
Nigerian yellow cake.
Yeah, and the whole all the lies we were told to justify the war, lies that I believed at the time, being 19, 20 years old, not knowing any better. I mean, just what is it going to take? And I think what it's going to take, you alluded to it just a moment ago, V, when you talked about Jared's ties to the Chinese investors and the fact that these people who've been obsessing over the Russia connection, it even got to the point where now, I don't know if you guys saw, maybe you saw the story, V, because you're familiar with Chabad Lubavitch, right? Being a native New Yorker.
Mhm.
You see them on the corners asking people, "Are you Jewish? Well, come to shul. Are you not Jewish? Don't worry about it." But you know what I'm talking about, that they did a story about Chabad being the secret link between Trump and Putin. Did you see that?
No,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah,
Are you
really.
kidding me?
And Louise Mensch was out there pushing it.
Ah!
People are calling her anti-Semitic, which is hilarious because she's, she thinks that the term Zionist is inherently anti-Semitic. I
Oh
guess
my
nobody
God.
told
Zionism is
Zionist
a political
Organization of America.
philosophy, man.
Yeah.
Created by an atheist, no less.
Right. I mean, nobody told the Zionist Organization of America, which is the oldest, it's an organization that predates the existence of the state of Israel, and Zionist is an anti-Semitic term. But anyway, the point is that, unlike this nonsense about the supposedly extensive ties between Trump and his organization, Russians, there is a real connection between the Kushners and the Chinese.
Correct.
And
1,000%.
maybe it's time for our Chinese friends to take a page from what they accuse the Russians of. I don't believe the Russians are directly connected to it. I think there are people that they have some, let's say, intermediaries with people that they have mutual acquaintances. And they don't even hide that. I mean, Israel Adam Shamir, who writes for the Un's Review, of course, has been an advisor to Julian Assange in the past, and he has connections in Moscow, but he doesn't even hide it. I mean, he's honest about it.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that the DNC emails that we got further confirmation from Guccifer 2.0 were from an insider leak, were from Seth Rich, who was murdered mysteriously on the streets of DC.
Happens all the time.
Yeah, just
totally
happens all the
normal.
time. Somebody who leaks things about DNC and Hillary gets just gunned down, and no suspects, nothing. But maybe it's time for the Chinese to do what the Russians have been accused of, and dump some dirt on Kushner out there. Just put it out there. I mean, what have they got to lose? I mean, it's at a certain point. Do they want hundreds of thousands of starving North Koreans flooding across the Yalu border?
No, they don't.
Are they going to be even the Chinese, who are pretty hard ass? I mean, do they want to machine gun these people when they're starving and desperate, coming across the Yalu, just looking for some food and medicine after Pyongyang gets bombed?
No, because it'll be political disaster. They know this. James, you got to understand. That's the strategy. They want to create a refugee crisis. They want
to screw up the Silk Road, right?
Exactly.
Block it.
They are trying to screw up the Silk Road. Exactly. They want that refugee crisis because it's going to create a political. It's going to create a political crisis in China. Because what's the Chinese going to do? They can't machine gun these people. They can't stop these. If they stop these people at the border, the insolvent seven and all the patsies in the UN will say, "Oh, look, the Chinese are inhumane. They're not letting the refugees into their border. How can they do this?" Nah. That's what they're going to do. This is going to. China knows this. This is a full-on onslaught. Why? Because the gold standard is about to be born upon the world. The dollar is going to die.
Yeah, and these people, they realize they've got months. They don't have years. They have months.
They have months left. They're going for broke.
Right.
They're going for broke. That's why Donald Trump, he's got his hands tied. He's right now like a clueless Muppet, just walking, like a lost child, running around the White House.
I hope and pray he gets his balls back.
He needs to get his balls. He needs to find his brains. Get Donnie. Get your balls and your brains back, man.
And fire McMaster, fire his son-in-law, tell his son-in-law, look, Jared, I love you. You're my son-in-law, but I can't have you doing things for this administration.
What he needs to do is sit his son-in-law down and be the old Donald Trump, where he said he'll fire his kids like a dog. And his kids know this. I don't know what happened. But all of a sudden, Donald needs to sit Jared down and be like, Jared, you're my son-in-law and all that. Love you, but you're fired. Go F yourself. Have a nice day.
Give him almost like the Frito treatment from The Godfather too.
Exactly. Which brings us to the last bit of news, CJ. Why don't you cover this and we'll close out? Which is now Google is now the fact checker of news. I heard, huh?
Yeah, just we've been witnessing a lot in terms of the media, in terms of YouTube, and trying to take the new media and put the MSM back in the spotlight. So now Google has taken upon itself to become the new fact checker of the internet. So they have placed this new flag that's going to alert people as they're doing their Google searches in regards to what is fact checked and what is not. So, and this is going to be entirely backed by Google. So Google will now be the governing body of the media.
Which is terrible, because they're the people who have taken over. Now that David Rockefeller has gone on to his infernal reward, Bilderberg is now Googleberg, for the last several years, as Daniel Estlin and others have documented. And Google is also, they also sponsor Mr. Bellingcat, or Bellingcrap, as I call him, Elliot Higgins,
Yeah.
who's with the Atlantic Council, who puts out all this fake manipulated images to push this idea of, we don't need to put actual intelligence out there anymore. We don't have to have Nikki Haley giving intelligence briefings. Now all we need, as this doofus I referenced in one of my articles, Andrew Exum, says, all we need is open source information now. You notice everybody's just so keen on OSINT now, because all we need is proof that some people were gassed, and that's good enough to show that Assad and only Assad could have done this. Never mind how many times the rebels have used chemical weapons, at least chlorine gas, your
52 times. And they do have the capacity. They have the 12-step process down packed to produce sarin.
And even if they didn't have the capacity to produce it within Syria itself, I mean, they could get it smuggled across the border from Turkey. We had to, people from the Republican Party of Turkey, which has nothing to do with the Republican Party of the U.S., accusing Erdogan of having a covert chemical weapons program funded by the Saudis. And that's where the chemicals came from for Ghouta. Other people say it was leftovers from Gaddafi's arsenal that Hillary had smuggled into Syria. I don't know the case, but I know that there was leakage that some people in Europe realized that the chemicals didn't match up. Once they got the samples of Assad's arsenal, the real nerve agents he had, they realized it didn't match the Ghouta samples.
Absolutely correct. And with that being said, guys, we're at the end of the broadcast. Thank you all for listening in. Check back with us tomorrow, and then later on today we got Dex coming on at 2:30. He's going to be coming on with the Trading Terror Dome 2:30. Contacted me this morning, so stay tuned for that. With that being said, this is V and CJ and my main man James, the Russian Analyst. We're over and out. Take it away, CJ.